Welcome back to Luke's Properties YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about why an HMO landlord named Steve said yes to rent to rent. A question I get all the time is, why would a landlord say yes to rent? So many people don't understand the value in the rent to rent service. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you why one of our landlords said yes to our rent to rent offer, and hopefully this should give you more of an understanding as to why landlords say yes to rent. So let's get into it. So first things first, who is Steve? Well, Steve is a portfolio landlord. He owns several HMOs on the same street. When I first started speaking to Steve, he was letting some of his friends live in a few of his properties just to cover the mortgages. So he wasn't achieving maximum rent. He was doing his friends a favor while they were selling their house to move into another. He was letting them live in a couple of his houses. He also had a friend who had gone through a divorce, so he was letting them stay in one of his houses too. And they were just covering the mortgage. I think the mortgage was around £500 a month, and that's what they were paying Steve. And because Steve is quite a wealthy man, he was happy to do his friends a favour rather than charge them market rent. And some of his other properties were rented out to companies, so he was making money from some of his other ones, and I'm sure that covered any shortfalls that he had from renting to his friends. But when I approached Steve, my offer was to pay market rent. So rather than pay £500 a month, I was going to offer him around £1,100 per month for his 5 and 6 bed HMOs, because I had companies that I had rented other houses on the same road to that were willing to pay me around £2,500 to £3,000 for those exact houses, because they worked very close by within walking distance from those houses, and they all wanted to live together. So my offer to Steve was to pretty much double his rent once his friends had found other accommodation. And even though Steve's priorities was to be a good friend, he's also a businessman and he's invested a lot of money into his houses, so it makes sense that he gets a positive cash flow from all of his investments. He had also had a bad health scare. I think he'd had a heart attack, and that had shifted his focus to living a more relaxed lifestyle. He had began thinking seriously about retirement and travelling with his missus. I found all of this out just by speaking to Steve. I organised a viewing for a few of his houses. He came and met me, and as we were walking in between each house, we were having a chat, getting to know each other, and this is when I found out about his health scare, and that's when he started telling me he wanted to retire soon and start travelling. He was in his late 50s, his dad had recently passed away too, so he was really at a turning point in his life, and he was beginning to value time, freedom and time with his loved ones over money. He had accumulated a fair bit of money over the years. He was a portfolio landlord. He also owned his own business. I think he was a financial advisor, so he'd done pretty well in life. So let's summarize what Steve actually wanted. He wanted time freedom to travel the world with his wife. He wanted no more stress of managing tenants. He was self-managing all of his houses. He had some companies renting houses from him, but they were normally short term. They'd stay for 3 months, 6 months, and then Steve would have to find new tenants. Whilst trying to run another business and look after his family, managing tenants was becoming quite stressful to him. So he wanted to relieve himself of that stress. He wanted predictable income with no estate agent fees. Steve had worked with estate agents in the past, and most of them would charge him 1 month's rent to find a tenant, and they'd also charge between 10 to 15% plus VAT every month for managing the property. And with HMOs, the turnaround can be quite often, sometimes every 3 months, every 6 months. So imagine having to pay a tenant fine fee 2 to 4 times a year on each one of his houses. Sometimes the tenant fee can be 1 whole month's rent, and then having to pay a 10-15% commission every month on top of that. That can become quite expensive, and that was an expense that Steve just didn't want to incur anymore. So that's what Steve wanted. Once we discussed what Steve wanted, I then made Steve an offer. My offer was to double what he was making from his friends. So when his friends finally moved on, I was willing to pay double what they were paying, so he could make an extra £500-600 per month per house. I offered to take on 3 houses, so that was an extra £1,500 to £1,800 per month on top of what he was already making from his other houses and his other investments and his business. I offered to take on full management and maintenance, so I would manage the properties, collect rent. I'd also maintain the property and put aside around 5% of the rent for minor maintenance, so that Steve didn't have to think about that. And I offered him a guaranteed rent every single month for a 3-year term. This offer was very appealing to Steve, and needless to say, he accepted immediately. Nowadays he travels all over the world with his wife, stress-free, and he enjoys his life. So the final insights here are: Steve is another wealthy landlord with a wealthy landlord mindset. He doesn't think like a poor person, he thinks like a wealthy person, and wealthy people value their time more than money. Poor people won't understand this because they're not wealthy. Poor people tend to think that money is the most important thing because they don't have any. But once you become wealthy, you realize that time is more important. You can always make more money because money tends to flow to wealthy people because they understand it. They understand how to use it, how to attract it towards them, and how to multiply it. So money is abundant to wealthy people, whereas poor people find money to be scarce. They think that all that matters is money, whereas wealthy people understand that all that really matters is time. Steve already had wealth, and by the time he met us, all he wanted was peace. He valued his time over money, and if your rent-to-rent offer aligns with that, then landlords will always say yes. So not every landlord will have a wealthy landlord mindset, and that's okay. They just might not be the right fit for you. But the landlords who do have a wealthy mindset, they're the perfect type of client for rent-to-rent. So I hope this video has explained why landlords say yes to rent-to-rent. If you want someone to help you get your first few rent-to-rents within the next 180 days or less, then I'll put a link in the video description below. Click the link and you'll be able to book a call in with myself. On that call, we'll work out if we're a good fit for each other and if I could be a good mentor for you. If not, then keep watching my YouTube videos, copy what I'm doing, make notes, and go out there and build your own rent-to-rent business. I hope this helps, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.